The Spanish Netflix series Raising Voices, or Ni Una Más, tackles some very real issues that have the potential to be extremely triggering. The content is rough and brutal, but can it adequately execute its vision? When the profile I Am Coleman Miller publishes a photo with the caption, "This is me the day before I was assaulted," normality disappears for a trio of friends and everything changes. How and when did this assault happen? Who's behind the profile? How much truth is there in this accusation, and who is the real victim? So because of the YouTube algorithm and the word police, just know that when I use the word assault in this review, I really mean another word that begins with the letter R. Now, this is an 8-episode drama that begins in the present and almost immediately then takes us back several months to explain how the current events came to be. Alma, she's the main character. She's a 17-year-old student who faces a lot of the same struggles as other teens of her age. Difficult parent situations, feeling isolated, experiencing jealousy, even being affected by toxic relationships. Now, she's got a couple of best friends, and through the dramas of high school, we watch all of the emotional upheavals that go along with that age. Now, the crux of the story is that after a party, Alma begins to act differently and experience more strife with just about everybody in her life. Through vague flashbacks and partial memories, a mystery begins to build, all while simultaneously we watch some seriously jacked up interactions take place between other friends and acquaintances of Alma. Now, the central story, it is powerful. At times it's raw and then very poignant. It's taking real situations and bringing them to light, showing how assault can happen way more frequently than one might imagine. Now, the main trio of girls, they each have their own sets of struggles, and they all display realistic emotional exchanges. Alma, played by Nicole Wallace, convincingly creates a rebellious and headstrong teen who has the capacity for great amounts of love and compassion. She's ornery and can even be like a spoiled brat at times, but there's also a massively endearing quality to her, especially in the way that she cares for her friends. Carla Gaye portrays Alma's best friend Greta, and she is the free spirit of the trio. Greta's smart, determined, independent, not afraid to live life to her own beat. She's also a fierce friend. I was always encouraged by how dedicated and uplifting she was with Alma. Now, Greta also has her own story arc that it does work to add some suspense and some tension to the narrative. And then there's Nada, played by Aicha Villaverde. She is a wild card of a personality. One minute, she may be all prim and proper, with the next being a horned-up banshee. Her erratic behavior, it's a little mix of Alma and Greta, except Nada also finds herself in a continuous dysfunctional loop with her boyfriend. Now, as much as I appreciate and enjoy the main story arc, this series is very bloated when it comes to extraneous storylines. Some of them do finally come around and connect, sometimes tangentially, but others feel like distractions or filler that extend the time but not necessarily the effectiveness of the story. And some of these are simply just for story convenience. Like there's a relationship one of the girls develops, and because of the person, it works to set up some resolutions in the final act pretty easily. The relationship, it isn't very believable, but it does create a way for the narrative to conclude without a lot of mess. Now, the themes of assault, they are just woven through a lot of this in a variety of ways. And the show also bravely dives into the dilemma that begins if an accusation isn't necessarily true. I mean, what are the ramifications for that? Who ends up getting hurt the most in those situations? And then what are the consequences? I like that the series answers these and doesn't leave them dangling in the ether. The atmospheres and tones of situations, they create palpable reactions. I mean, you can feel the dread and lack of security a character is facing, ramping up unease and discomfort. And this is also effective in influencing our reactions to characters. Some can become more positively viewed, while others sink further into sketchiness. Now, another distraction from the narrative involves Greta's family business. And again, this is used more for plot convenience than story depth, even if the story does believe that its inclusion is extremely valuable. Now, even though there is a good deal of angsty drama in this to help keep the story exciting and engaging, the extraneous story elements work against the pacing and they make the show longer than it needs to be. Some of that's just because of repetitious character interactions. We're seeing very similar arguments or conversations repeatedly. The rest simply just from scenes that drag on too long or could be cut completely without any detriment to the overall understanding or strength of the story. Now, something I struggled with was the repeated use of assault imagery. Now, luckily, we don't see full actions, but we are shown enough to know exactly what's going on. And these scenes are then duplicated several times. And I understand it is to showcase the horror and violence that a woman is experiencing, but it almost begins to feel gratuitous because we're witnessing the same sequences repeatedly. I mean, if the showrunners were looking to elicit a visceral reaction of disgust and anger, it worked, but it worked from the very first instance. And this is why I think the show has the potential to be triggering for some. The assaults are emotionally graphic and heartbreaking to endure. And because they're interspersed at random times throughout the series, it's hard to pinpoint where you could actually skip if you didn't want to put those actions into your eyeballs. But this can also be triggering because it's not just one assault we watch or even hear about. Even when something is simply being described, it's grotesque and infuriating. Like, even if the victim weren't my own kid, but I learned of the assault and then came into contact with the perp, McDonald's would have a new item on the menu with the filet-o-penis. Or maybe I'd simply just go all Ramsay Bolton on the dude. Hyperbole aside, there are a lot of injustices portrayed here. But also on the positive side, some redemption and comeuppances come about too. The overall tone is a dark and depressed one, but it does work to provide hope as we reach the conclusion. So overall, Raising Voices bravely examines multiple facets of sexual assault, highlighting various instances and showcasing the mental, emotional, and physical torment it causes. Repetitive imagery is effective in creating repulsion, but also feels unwarranted because the point is made so clearly. With convincing and relatable characters and an engaging mystery, the series is enthralling despite the bloated nature of the numerous story arcs and complications. As a warning, the show can be triggering and is difficult to watch in several scenes, but the message and point are relevant and necessary as long as assaults just continue to happen. There is a lot of sex and nudity, a ton of profanity, and then a lot of violence, including horrific depictions of sexual assault. I give Raising Voices 3.5 out of 5 couches. So, have you watched any good dramas lately? Let me know what you watched in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.